If you're a real estate investor in Colorado, you may want to prepare for what may be a difficult year managing tenants as we expect to see tenant rental delinquencies increase overall in tenants in 2023. I'm Mark Cunningham with Grace Property Management, and in our property management company, where we manage everything from low income to high income, different parts of towns, different zip codes, different building types, all over the board, we are starting to see our delinquency rate of tenants creep up a little bit as we move through 2023, and we expect that to go higher. And let me explain why we're seeing that here in place. Number one is simply this: the government rental assistance funds are largely closed. They've spent all their rental assistance funds that the government had, and that's gone. Those funds are dried up. Over the last couple of years of COVID, in Colorado alone, the government estimates that 36,000 households have received some form of rental assistance aid in the form of paid rent, and they've paid out over $466 million. That's just Colorado. Now, that money came from the federal government to the state. The state distributed that money on behalf of tenants who found themselves in need of help paying their rent. So over the last couple of years, this has been a great thing for tenants. It's been a great thing for landlords because it's kept everything flowing. If someone didn't have a job, it was okay. You could apply for rental assistance, and that came through, but that is closed. The most of that money is dried up. That's gone away. Now, secondly, we see that the average saving rate for individuals, and certainly for most tenants, is way, way down. You may not be able to see this graph. This shows the average savings rate for any individual in the United States going all the way back to 1960. And you can see it kind of hovered around 10%. It dipped in the 80s. It popped up a little bit, dropped in the mid 80s, kind of went down in the 2000s. Tech bubble went down. And if you can see this right here, it went sky high to almost 30%. That means the average American was saving 30% of their income. Why did it pop so high? Well, that was COVID, when the government started sending out funds and people just got checks in the mail, and they saved it because we were all scared and didn't know what was going to happen. So we saved it, we spent it. The government did a second round of stimulus, if you'll remember. It popped back up. Well, since then, this has continued to decline to what is right now almost an all-time low. So the current savings rate is estimated to be 3.4%, and the expectation for early 2023 is it's going to drop to 2.2%. That would be an all-time historic low because people don't have enough money to save. They're spending all the money they're making. Well, how does this contribute to delinquencies and rents? Because they can't dip into the savings account like they may have been able to do in the past if they experience a job loss or a financial issue that is impacting their ability to pay rent. Third, inflation's up. Everything costs more. Tenants and landlords and everybody are spending a higher percentage of their income on life, on filling up the gas tank, on going to the grocery store. So they have less money left over to pay that rental obligation, and some of them then can't, which leads to, of course, increased delinquencies there. And fourth, the impacts of legislation. So right or wrong, over the last couple years, the Colorado legislature and our national legislature has passed laws that would make it easier for a tenant to pay their rent over time, and thereby making it harder for a landlord to evict a non-paying tenant. Now, you can have an opinion on that, whether that's a good thing, whether that's a bad thing, but the fact of the matter is that legislation in many bills and laws, and we talk about them some here on our rentgrace.com website, those have impacted landlords to make it more difficult and more time-consuming to collect rent that is due. So just because they're stepping out the time frame, that's causing the delinquency rate of tenants to go up, because a long time ago, if a tenant didn't pay rent and they just refused to pay, a landlord could go through the legal eviction process, and within about 60 days, they could reclaim their property because the landlords have payments. The landlord has a mortgage. They have to make their payments, so they need that tenant paying rent. And if the tenant wasn't paying rent, the idea was they could get their property back and place a new tenant who would pay the rent. Well, this is now causing delays and delays and delays. We have new pending legislation in Colorado which would delay that further. So the average eviction in Colorado right now, guesstimates, because sometimes they go faster than others, but it's taking approximately 3 months from the time the tenant doesn't pay that first payment to the point in time that you go through the court process, through the legal process, and actually reclaim your property as a landlord. It's an ugly thing. Nobody likes to do that. It doesn't help the tenant, it doesn't help the landlord. It's a terrible thing. We want to minimize that as much as possible. But when a tenant is abusing that aspect and refusing to pay, the landlord should have a right to reclaim their property because it's their property and they've got to pay a mortgage. But because of this pending legislation, and because of current legislation, I should say, we have seen these things stretch out further and further. Now, our internal, we manage over 1,000 doors here in the Denver market. We average a 1% delinquency. We've been in business since 1978. We track this every single month. And every single month, it is typically for us less than 1%. That means at the end of the month, we have less than 1% of the total rent that is due to our company from all of our tenants. Only less than 1% is outstanding. Now, in the last couple months, we've seen this slowly kind of creep up. It's now just a little above 1%. So it's still very, very tight, but we've never been over 1%. It's very rare for us to be over 1% because we have good tenants. And if tenants can pay their bills, they will. But what's happening is they don't have the money, oftentimes. So we want to ensure that as landlords, we're working with our tenants. We're doing everything we can do to give them the time they need, to work with them, to help them with their rental assistance, to pay that rent due. But we're starting to see it creep up. National averages, I've heard, are as high as 15%, which I don't know any property management companies that are running a 15% delinquency, but that's some of the data and stats that we see thrown around there. Now, there is good news, and that would simply be this. We are seeing rents flattening. Now, if you're a landlord, you say, well, gosh, that's not good news for me. I want my rents to go down. But it's very good news for tenants because they're not going to continue to see these drastic increases in rents going up time and time. We're seeing rents increase. Part of the reason we're seeing rents flatten is because inventory is increasing. As the sales market slows, a lot of real estate owners are not able to sell their house for the money they need to sell it. They bought it high and prices have come down a little bit maybe. So if they sell it, they're going to lose money. They don't want to lose money. They can't afford to lose money. They can't afford to sell it. Therefore, they're going to turn that rental property, they're going to turn that house into a rental property, which adds more inventory to the market, which is a good thing. The more inventory that's there, the more supply that is there, the lower the rental rates come down. So if we want to see rents drop, we just need more supply, and that will naturally take care of itself. And we're seeing that start to happen right now. So that's a good thing for tenants on the horizon, that we're going to see rents continue to flatten. If you're one of our owner landlords, we're doing all this for you already. We're making sure that we minimize any delinquencies you have. We're working fairly with our tenants to ensure that we give them every opportunity to pay if they're able to do so. And if not, we work with them to reclaim the property, but we never want to go through the eviction process. It's a terrible thing to do for anybody. But if we can be of assistance, jump on our website, rentgrace.com. We're happy to be a resource if we're able to do that.